Hello, this is Daniel here. I want to talk about some of the different approaches to practicing scales that I have described in my new ebook, Major and Minor Scales by Johann Caspar Mertz. In this book, I've given 5 different approaches you can use to practicing scales: bursts, dynamics, articulation, emphasis, and tone color. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about each one, and I don't want to give away too much. Scales in bursts is probably one of the best ways to practice scales, because you often find scales in small segments when you're playing pieces. And I'm going to play some of the examples that are in my book that demonstrate this. So for example, in Capriccio Arabe by Francisco Tárrega, we have little passages like that. That's a little bit of a scale there. Now a much more obscure piece, Etude number 10 by Leonard Schultz. We have a little passage of scale there. Now, Etude number 14, opus 29 by Fernando Sor. This, I think the purpose of this etude is to have these little bursts of scales. So we have those little bursts. Okay. I have 2 more examples. So this is now another obscure piece. It's called Gavotte by Frederick Rung. This has little passages in thirds. In this example here of a little burst in thirds. So there's a little burst there. And finally, a very well-known example, Bach's Prelude from BWV 1006A. Here. We have a little burst, and then another little burst. So, they're just a few examples. There's just 5 examples, and they're notated in my book. But you can find many, many more of those. And this is why I think it's really important to practice scales in bursts, because it's very much related to how you find them in pieces of music. Dynamics now. Here I borrowed some information from Carl Czerny, who was a pupil of Beethoven's. His Pianoforte School, Book 3, and I've provided a link to that book, is just incredible. It's filled with incredible amounts of detail, information, and musical examples. They're for the piano, the examples, but you can apply a lot of it to any instrument. It was published around 1850. So he gives 5 different levels of dynamics, and he says that we should practice all degrees of dynamics in all degrees of movements, from tempo moderato to prestissimo. And at first, we should not introduce crescendos or diminuendos. So you would practice, let's say we just do a little C major scale, you would practice this with 5 different dynamics at very all different degrees of tempi as well, without introducing crescendo or diminuendo. So you could have a pianissimo, for example, that's kind of fast. You could do that slowly, pianissimo. You could do a forte at a moderate tempo, right? Not introducing any crescendos or diminuendos. And then once you've mastered that, then you can start practicing crescendos and diminuendos from all of the different degrees. Shoni then describes the characteristics of each dynamic. I just want to read a little bit of some of this. So, how he describes the pianissimo, for example. He says, the pianissimo, which indicates the gentlest touching of the keys, he writes, but I've written the strings. So, however, as not to become indistinct, it bears the character of secrecy, mystery, and when executed with the utmost perfection, it is capable of producing a pleasing effect. He goes into quite a bit of detail about each dynamic level. The next section talks about articulation, and again there are 5 different levels. Shoni writes that there lie innumerable shades and modifications, all of which may be employed. So you have those 5 different articulations and then innumerable, it's a hard word, shades in between those as well. So I've written those out. So being able to emphasize any note at will. So if we want to emphasize, let's say, our M finger, there are many different ways we can do this, and I've written an exercise in the book that's very specifically aimed at doing this, where you can control the emphasis of each finger. And finally we have tone color. And now I've borrowed some information from Sydney Pratton and her guitar school, and there's a link to that in the book. She gives 5 different examples, 5 different plucking regions. Region A, Region B, Region C, Region D, and Region E. So we can practice scales in those different regions, and she describes the effect of each one. I hope that's given you a little bit of food for thought, and if you purchase the book, you do also get videos of the scales where I play them in bursts as well. I play each scale 10 times. I think the issue of how we actually practice scales to enhance our musicality is not addressed much in guitar method books today, or even in the past. So my aim is really to give you a whole toolkit of these effects to apply to scales, so that when you play pieces, you have these effects at your control. They're at your mercy. They're at your disposal. So you have utmost control of dynamics and emphasis and articulation and tone color, and you have a lot of exploring to do. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks.